Hello again. So we have a little guest here with us this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you happen to be in the world. She said, nope, I'm going to sit in your lap and there's nothing you can do about it. So I said, hey, why don't you join the stream? But I was going to put her to work, so she shuffled the deck for us. Right, Melanie? Say hi. So, that said, there's a couple things we're going to be talking about today that I think are going to be a fun subject. There's a lot of different perspectives on this art, and all of them are correct to a certain degree, right? And there's different layers and levels of this knowledge that we access in our own time and in our own way. And so, what I plan on doing throughout my time on this channel is to kind of plant seeds, and to allow there to maybe be some opportunity for those who have ears to hear at the time, to maybe spark an interest for them to maybe jump on a course of study, or to look into subjects, or potentially even just as simple as changing the way that they ask their questions, right? And the things that they look for when we approach this oracle. And so today's tarot talk is going to be, I thought it was a clever name, the Aleph to the Tau. And this refers to the idea of the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. And really what I'm speaking about is the divine order of things and how that applies to the tarot, and some interesting kind of connections to where we are right now in the world, and specifically the period of time that we're in, being ruled by the Hermit, and representing the Deacon of the Ten of Pentacles. We're going to talk about that. Personal messages. Obviously, anybody who participates in the stream is entitled to a free personal message. And it also uses a very similar system to, right? I use the system of the Deacons, centered around your date of birth, and then we apply that to the period of time, and it's kind of like a mini tarot-based horoscope, because it does use the correspondences of the planets and signs associated with the Deacon when making that decision. So it's sort of a fusion of astrology and tarot, but it's very insightful, especially when you look at kind of where you are and where you're coming from, and then when you apply that to the period of time that we're in, it gives us some insight. Do we need to kind of navigate this situation defensively? Are we in a position of power? How are we connected with, or kind of being repelled from the situation? And so a lot of good learning can come from that. And again, anybody who would like to, will at the least, will locate your birth card, and as time allows, we'll go through doing personal messages for everybody, and the daily messages. Now, I do 4 readings a day that are general in nature. One is just a broad sort of global snapshot, right? Kind of the zeitgeist of the moment, as a daily message. And then if today happens to be your birthday, that message is up as well. Soul Talk, which is something that I began doing out of recognition for the fact that more people than not have trouble with that connection and aren't able to hear that voice. The reality is that our soul is speaking to us all the time, every moment. And when we're able to go through the proper steps and to do the work, it puts us in the position of hearing that. You can't hear it with the ears. Very similar to the Hermit. The light from the lantern that the Hermit is carrying doesn't work in the sun. It only works in the dark, right? Because it gets drowned out. So, same idea. And that said, that particular reading is really designed around, here's the thing that, if you were able to hear it, we're pointing at. This reading is a sign pointing at what you could be hearing if you're able to kind of quiet the din of the world and listen with the correct ears, so to speak. And so that's pretty insightful too. And that is available as a reading for anybody on the stream as well. And now today's Meet the Deacons is interesting because it kind of ties into the tarot talk for today, right? The idea here is that the period of time that we're in is the Ten of Pentacles, and it's a special time. And the wheel of the year is separated, at least with respect to the small cards, and it's derived from the 10-degree periods of time. And all of them have their own significance, but there's several that are kind of special. For instance, the solstices and the equinoxes, as an example, right? True north, these kinds of things. And so, as you may know, we're approaching very quickly the autumnal equinox, actually just in a couple of days, and that's the end of the period of time that we're in right now, end of the 10-degree period of the Deacon that we are currently in, which is the Ten of Pentacles. So we're going to talk about that and its implications in our lives. I want to say as well, my puppy's feeling very energetic tonight, and she's really in quite a mood. And I don't know if anybody here has met Arlo. Arlo's our other dog, and he just kind of wants to be left alone right now, and Melanie is not having that. So there may be a little bit of nonsense. If I have to jump up and grab the dog, you know why. Today's spotlight deck is Tarot of Ceremonial Magick. It's by Milo DuQuette and Constance DuQuette. This deck I've actually had up as a spotlight yesterday, and I decided to keep it up today because there's going to be some things that I'm covering in the tarot talk, as well as some of the other things that we're going to be discussing that come back to this deck in particular, just due to its usefulness with the Deacons, with the 30-degree periods of the court cards and so forth. So as we craft the story that is the Fool's Journey, it's interesting to kind of look at all the different literary devices that are used, right, to tell that story. So this deck is great just because it's kind of very packed. Oh, look at that, I cut to the Ten of Discs. This is the card we're going to be talking about, but there's a lot of information packed on here, so it's really good as a tool during teaching, and also as a tool during the sort of your personal meditation process of the period of time and so forth. So we're going to be referring to this throughout the evening, and as a spotlight deck, I thought it would be good to sort of combine it with some of the stuff that we're doing on the channel here. So the links in the description for this deck go directly to Milo DuQuette, who is the creator of the deck, and to a New Age store that is responsible for its production and distribution. So that is the official store to get it from. I don't earn any commissions or anything. I'm not affiliated in any way with either the DuQuettes or the store. I just happen to be a fan of his work, and wanted to ensure that you were able to kind of go to the right place if you have an interest in exploring this further. As well, I highly recommend anything that he's written will benefit your life. So, I mean, truly, he's a fascinating individual. Today's Beautiful Soul, Seekers and Guides. This is a continuation of a discussion that started yesterday with respect to approaching this oracle, and how we go about the process determines what we get out of it. And that's the obvious statement, right? I mean, how we approach a situation determines what we'll get out of it. Well, duh. But there's a very specific way that you can approach the tarot that will dramatically alter what you get out of that situation. And it can become something very special. In fact, it can become holy, and that's the point. And we'll talk about that. And random acts of wisdom. There's a lot of ways that you can derive truth in your life, right? And approaching an oracle or approaching an individual who uses one is not a bad way to do that. And you can gain a lot of perspective that way, because you're coming from a place of actually seeking truth, right? And then the other person is coming from a place of willfully directing toward finding that. And so it's a very cool relationship when somebody comes to a reader. But there's other ways also that you can go about this process, right? Like you can interrogate your universe in fun ways to kind of get back what you want to know. For instance, bibliomancy is a fun way of doing that. So essentially you grab a book, you open that book up to the first thing that you see, and you read the first sentence, and you take that as your advice, right? There actually have been books designed around that nowadays, where that's their whole purpose is to have a random blurb per page. But I find that there's a little more complexity when you choose a book that wasn't designed for that. So we'll go through that exercise too, just as a kind of a fun way to sort of just like a random moment of a snippet of something that you need to hear, outside of just using the cards, which we kind of do all the time on the channel here, you know. So, but and we will be doing today as well. The deck I'm going to be using for random cards is the Deviant Moon. And anybody who comes in that wants to, just say, you know, I want my random card, and I'll pull it for you. We'll do a quick little explanation of that random card, and then we'll go, you know, move along. As well, it's been kind of fun to explore this fun little thing. This is a book that I grabbed at a yard sale at my church. It was written in 1974, and it's a sun sign book. However, it sort of has an interesting twist where it focuses on kind of a humor / kind of darker side of the signs. It's really neat. It's a more honest view, so to speak, of the sun signs from a humorous take. And the author, Maria Elise Kremer, she's very clever. It's a great book. And so if you would like to participate in that as well, just pop your birthday in the chat or your sun sign. We'll look it up, and there's some fun stuff in there that we're going to bump into. It can be really interesting. So, and you know, random acts of wisdom is really just designed around recognizing that you know, truth can come from the craziest places, and whatever my particular goal in the stream tonight, you know, there needs to be this understanding and this openness to allow truth to come out outside of that, right? And so anytime that we see an opportunity for that, we should take it. And so that's what the random acts of kindness is. Oh, and Kerr, how's it going? Come on up, baby. There we go. Let's say hello. How are you doing? Yes, I'll be reading in a little bit. In the meantime, actually, while you're here, let's just pull a random card for you. Okay, the deck that I'm using for the random cards today is the Deviant Moon. Okay, and your random card today is Death. That is the card of transformation. It's the point after the Tower, right? And so the Tower is the lesson of the vehicle of transformation, the things that need to take place in order that transformation can happen. Because even if your intent is to transform, it requires more than just the desire to do so or the will to do so. There's a step that needs to be taken, and it's a pretty profound step, and that is represented by the Tower, and it represents the dissolution of a certain part of ourself that is hindering that process. And then the outcome of that is the transformation itself, which is represented by death. And certainly immediately after that is this state of enlightenment. So the lesson in that card is to allow for that transformation. Don't fear it when it comes, because it's inevitable anyway. And you can either fight it, swim against the current of the river, and work really hard and get taken with it anyway, or succumb to it, give into it, and go with the current, and then it makes it easier. Sure, go right ahead. You can post your question. And so the lesson here is to allow yourself to succumb to the inevitable, and in doing so, you find yourself, and you allow for that to happen, and it can't happen otherwise. That's why the Tower shouldn't be feared, because it is literally the vehicle by which transformation is allowed to take place, and it can't take place otherwise, right? So that's the lesson of death on the surface. there's a lot more to that, obviously, but yeah. Thank you, and thank you for popping in today. You know, as we go through the evening too, there's going to be several things that we uncover, and I'm looking forward to that. Okay, let's see here. Okay, an offer letter, right? Mm-hmm. When will they contact me? Okay, well, let's take a look. And you know, we're in a very kind of exciting time with respect to the energy that's going on right now. Hales, how's it going? Good to see you. Thanks for popping back in. We're in the period of the Ten of Pentacles, right? And this is a period of time where, as we move through the year, we move through the different Deacons. And we also move through the planetary influence of that Deacon. So, you know, we're not just in Virgo. We move through the different Deacons, which is Sun in Virgo, Venus in Virgo, and now finally where we are in the energy of Mercury in Virgo. Okay? And now as we move through this period of time, we've gone from, you know, some energies of the work being done and there being an advantage if we're able to ensure that the work doesn't suffer when we get busy and we're able to take advantage of an opportunity for growth, right? And then in the 9, if we've done that, we had the rest of that. The rest that comes with the work being done properly and the lack of imposition on us and this, the peace and all the good things that come with that, right? Then we have the 10, right? And the 10 of Pentacles is a period of time now where this refers to some very profound knowledge. First of all, we're looking at the period of self-reflection, reflecting on our decisions. So the older gentleman that's seated looking at the family is looking back at these different people and his life and his decisions that formed this family. But there's other stages here as well, right? We have the baby on the bottom looking at us. So the baby isn't examining the world. The baby isn't examining the decisions that they've made. It's examining you, right? Like that's you, and it's sort of like the beginning of this circumstance here. And then you have these two adults that are kind of in passing. They're busy and they're in passing, and they're living life, fulfilling their role. And then you have the older gentleman who's watching this happen. Now he's been each one of these roles, and what part of the self-reflection is looking at his walk, right? And so it's an idea of, someone at one point said nostalgia, and that's not a bad word, but another word for this is self-reflection, and there's a very profound, esoteric, deep, occult reason for that, and it's not an accident. And it ties in with one of the talks for this evening. One of the topics here is the Meet the Deacons 10 of Pentacles, and that's the period of time that we're in right now. And of course, all of the personal messages tonight are going to be tied to this phase that we're in right now as well, the Hermit and the 10 of Pentacles. And so let's talk about that real quickly, and then we'll move on to readings, and we'll see how this actually applies in everybody's life. I mentioned in the top of the stream here that the 10 of Pentacles is a special card in the tarot. In fact, it's one of the most special cards. And the reason that is because of where it lands in the order. The order is an important thing. You know, there's an order to the universe, right? There's an order to creation. Math works because of the fact that we put the numbers in the proper order, and that's not arbitrary. 1 is 1, 2 is 2 ones, 3 is 3 ones, or 1 2 and 1 1. But there's rules to that, and those rules are so effective that we can actually create entire sciences around it, right? We can create entire modes of thinking, entire modes of communication. Mathematics is a universal language, and it also gives us access to all other bodies of knowledge: music, art, frequency, reality. Order is very important. Order of operations. You can't do math if you swap subtraction and addition. It won't work. Everything breaks. We'd never made it to the moon. We never have divided lands properly back in the, like math would not have worked if we had not followed the order of operations, right? And order exists in other ways too that are very profound. We're going to talk a little bit about that as far as music is concerned, and as far as the patterns that are relevant to our existence. But one of the things I wanted to talk about today with respect to the 10 of Pentacles is this order. That's why the talk today is called Aleph to Tau, because it's Alpha to Omega, right? Alpha being the first letter of the Greek alphabet, Omega being the last, A to Z, beginning to end. Aleph being the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, represented by the Fool, and Tau being the last letter of the alphabet. Now, what is the order, to be clear, in the tarot with respect to, say, the elements? And I have that listed here visually with the Rider-Waite deck. It's Wands, Cups, Sword, Pentacle, and there's a reason for that, and that has to do with the elements. The wand being fire, pardon me. The puppy's being a puppy. The element of fire is sort of that primordial energy that is responsible for the will of creation to be made manifest. Fire applied to water gives birth to earth, or to air, and those three give birth to earth. And so what we have here is the idea of the order as well of the states of matter, right? You have fire, which is the plasma state, densified, turns into these other states, and how they all apply to each other change those states. For instance, fire applied to solid turns it into a liquid. Can skip that entirely and sublimate, which is the act of solid becoming a gas and skipping the liquid. But anyway, they interplay in a lot of interesting ways. But this is essentially the order in which, from an esoteric and occult perspective, that the tarot is based on, and that our sort of the blueprint of creation is based on, comes from this order. Starting with fire, water, and then air, then those three interplaying to make earth. So now, there's another question that you could ask, like, what is the order then of the cards? We know that there's several different types of tarot card, right? There's the aces, which are sort of separate. They're non-manifest. They haven't happened yet. You don't own it. Shika, thanks for popping in. It doesn't exist in your world. It's being offered, right? The hand is offering you the element, and so it's not yours yet. Another way of putting that is that it's sort of like the blueprint for that element to be made manifest in our world. This is the version of it in the higher world before it shines through that singularity and then holographically projects into our world, right, and becomes physical matter through that interplay. Another beautiful way to look at that is the idea of three being the surface. 3 points make a plane, but it's only two-dimensional. It's the fourth point, as long as it doesn't lie in that plane, that makes a fourth-dimensional or a three-dimensional object. That fourth dot makes 3D. And so it's the interplay of these three that make our world and the idea of the pentacle. And so there's this order. And so what we would do is we would take the next set of types of tarot card, which are the court cards. And the court cards are responsible for essentially bringing into existence the small cards. Because what are the small cards, of course, but the minutia, the events. Events don't happen without players to make those events happen. And so the universe is created first in the aces, giving birth to the Ace of Pentacle. And now at that point, the courts come in, and they act upon that universe. And what we see in the small cards, which we talk about very, very often on this channel, is the Deacons. These small cards that depict this story, right? This interplay of these elements through that period. And so, what is the order of the small cards, and what is the order of the court cards? And so when we look at how the story's laid out, we have this non-manifest elements that then become these court cards, the starting with the princess or the page, right, and then going through up into the queen, who then, from her relationship with the knight, promotes the knight to the king, right? It's kind of the queen does the queen's really the player in the tarot, and actually the queen is really just a manifestation of the princess. It's really just all about the princess, and we'll talk about that. But that said, the princess being the page to the Rider-Waite people, the page. So the idea here is okay, then we have the small cards, and how do those line up? And they line up in the order that they're in numerically, right, 2 through 10, in this order. And so if you were to lay the story of the tarot out as one big pile, and if you haven't done it, do it. It's a lot of fun, and the connections are beautiful to see with your eyes, and it's impossible to see any other way, right? You have to lay the cards out in one big picture and just look at the whole thing. The way to do that is the Fool on top, all by itself, and then 3 rolls of 7 majors will give us the 21 remaining major arcana. But now, what is the order of the minors? Well, it's the 4 aces. But the throne of the 4 aces, i.e. the thing that brings them into physical existence, the thing that allows them to play in our universe, is the page or the princess. So the next would be the Page of Wand, Page of Cup, Page of Sword, Page of Pentacle, and then in that order with the other court cards. The Knight, which is the prince in the Thoth, and then the Queen, who's the queen. The Queen consorts with the Knight, promoting him to king, and they give birth to the next princess. So then you have the small cards, which follow 2 through 10 in this order: Ace, Cup, Sword, Pentacle. Okay, and that order is important mathematically, and it's important from the respect of the thing that gives birth to the other thing, right? Like, it's fire and water together that make air, and it's these 3 that give birth to Earth. So now, why does any of this matter about the period of time that we're in right now? This is great esoteric knowledge, and that's great. Or it's, if you want to study this, then I encourage you look at some of the resources that are available out there on the subject of tarot and Kabbalah and these type things. But what's more important, and why it's relevant, is the period of time that we're in right now is the Ten of Pentacle. And the Ten of Pentacle happens to be very special, the final card of the tarot. Like, of the story of the tarot, the last card, the last page, is the Ten of Pentacle. It starts with the Fool, goes through all the majors, and the play of those is this other layer of the interplay of the court cards and their relationships, their connections. And those give birth to the small cards. And the order of this taking place is within the order of the elements displayed here. Starting with the wand fire and then the cup water, and the interplay of those two things, giving birth to air, mind. Fire and water give birth to mind, right? Thought, universal consciousness, but it's not manifest yet. And then we have our world. Now, there's obviously many ways to tell this story, and one of the ways is using the Kabbalistic tree of life. And that's because that's really what the tarot is, at least in the form that most of us are familiar with. It is a pictorial representation of the Kabbalistic tree of life. And if you look at the Ten of Pentacles, where we are right now, and see the image of the layout that the artist chose, they chose this shape on purpose. This shape is represents the Sephirot of the tree of life, each pentacle here being in one of those positions. And this is the actual symbol of the tree of life. And you'll notice that these are the same thing, right? And that's not an accident. Because what we're looking at in the Ten of Pentacles ultimately is we're looking at physical reality made manifest in its final form. And so this has some implications. It's one of the reasons that when we look at this card, we see it as almost like it's the end of the story and looking at the reflection of the past, kind of looking at what we've just witnessed. And at the same time, the implication of the fact that we are now in a period that is at the end means that what's next? The beginning. And so now there's some insight here which I want to point to. It's not an accident that the Ten of Pentacles falls at the end of spring, and the period of time that is represented by the Deacon for the Ten of Pentacles ends on September 22nd, right? The astute observer will recognize that that is the first day of fall. That is the first day of the autumnal equinox. And so the beginning of the year and the end of the year are kind of swapped 90 degrees in the Hermetic sense when you're looking at the formation of the universe, the formation of both you and the universe that you live in this microcosmic, macrocosmic sense, right? As above, so below. And so, when it comes to the order of the cards and when it comes to the order of our play in that, there's several ways to look at this circumstance and how these energies interplay. For instance, the story of the princess consorting with the knight to elevate him to king. In this case, in the Thoth, it's the prince elevating into knight. The knight is always in a state of becoming the king in the Thoth. But there's all these interplays, and it's important just in the same manner that math relies upon there being this consistent perspective and an agreed upon framework, or it doesn't work. And that not being arbitrary, 2 is 2 because 2 is 2, right? Now the word is arbitrary and so on, but the concept, I think we can all agree upon. And so, when you look at the totality of this process, some interesting things are derived. One of the examples, if anybody's familiar with the term gematria, gematria is the idea of the fact that several languages, Greek being the most popular in Hebrew, don't have a separate system of numbers and letters. They use the same symbol for both. And that gives us some interesting opportunities here, right? And so we could easily then kind of look at the numerical value of certain words. Like for instance, there's a word that is derived from taking the first letter and the last letter of an alphabet. So in this particular circumstance, and it's actually we use a similar method to create the word alphabet. Like, what is the word alphabet? It's the first and second letter of the Greek alphabet, alpha, beta, which actually also Hebrew, arguably older than the Greek language, is Aleph and Bet, right? And so alphabet comes from the first two letters of the alphabet. But now if I take the first letter and the last letter, the beginning and the end, the numerical value of that is 401, right? The first letter is Aleph, which means 1, and the last letter is Tau, which means 400. These other 5 we'll talk about another time. That's only relevant if that letter appears as a last letter in a word, and that's not relevant here. Notice Tau doesn't have a final anyway, so that's not relevant. But the numerical value of the word Atah, Aleph, Tau, the first and the last. If you were to say it in Greek, it would be Ao, right, or Ao. But in Hebrew, the final letter is Tau, right? And so 401. Now, there's some interesting play here with respect to that, because other words also have numerical values, right? And every word has a numerical value with that respect. I mean, you can just put in the letters and do the math and figure it out. And then you can play with those numbers. If a number is 2 digits, you can add them together and keep doing that until you get 1 digit. That's a process called theosophical reduction. And so basically what that means is that we would take the value of 401 and we would add the 4 and the 1, and that would give us the number 5. And 5 means hey, which is the window. You know, the portal by which you can view through. That's powerful. So also, Atah means you. That's what it means in Hebrew. There is a word, Atah, Atah, and that word means you. Now, more specifically, and I think this is even the finer point, it means you from somebody else's perspective, meaning like, oh, you're watching this video. You are sitting. You are on your phone. You are whatever the case, right? And so it's somebody else saying you, implying you exist, and the person that is saying the word is not you. There's a separateness, and there's an attention. They are agreeing that you exist. Now, so consider what I'm saying here. You take the first card of the tarot and the last card of the tarot, and the numerical value represents the word you. That's just heavy, right? And now there's other representations. I'm not here to teach a course on Kabbalah. There's a lot of good resources out there if you want to do that. I'm certainly going to touch on the subject. I'm going to plant some pomegranate seeds, but I'm not here to teach the subject. However, you can't honestly approach the tarot from any respect, including doing a reading with a deeper level of meaning, without broaching the subject. Now, there are non-Kabbalistic tarot systems. The most effective and arguably more effective than the Golden Dawn system would be the alchemical tarot, because ultimately what the alchemical tarot is a distillation of this, which makes it more pure. There's less wrongness. Lauren, how's it going? So, you know, when you look at the subject and the different ways that you can approach the knowledge, obviously it's up to you to decide what level you want to approach that. But at the end of the day, what it actually is the pictorial representation of the Kabbalistic tree of life, which is ultimately this holographic picture of the creation of the universe and your own creation. And it's the full story beginning to end, which is the cool part. Like, imagine if somebody handed you a book and it was your life and it's beginning to end. And I don't mean the end of like, oh, you know, your death. I mean the end of like where you are right now, where you're actually residing in this present moment. The place that we aren't aware that we are, because we're limited by our senses and limited by our ability to process it with a human brain. So, you know, it comes down to listening without ears and seeing without eyes. That's the gist of this, of access. But ultimately, when you find yourself in a place like the Ten of Pentacles, which is not a bad card, obviously, because it's sort of, you know, it's the work completed. Jan B, thanks for popping in. Yeah, I'm going to be doing readings in just a couple minutes, probably about 5 or 6 minutes, and you're definitely on the list. And so the Ten of Pentacles also is kind of the bottom. And when you're at the bottom, there's nowhere to go but up. Right? Like, imagine if you're in a bowl and you're a marble and you drop that and eventually it stops. Like, there's nowhere else for it to go at this point other than back up that bowl, right? So when you're at the bottom, there's nowhere to go but up, and there's a beauty and the truth in that. And in fact, that's what you're about to do. We all are. And now how that plays out is going to be different for all of us. But what we're actually doing is just walking back up that ladder, you know? Well, that's literally what's happening, yes. And in fact, Hales, the kind of the purpose of this work is to identify the fact that we are doing that now. There's a little thing I wrote, you know, and I think that it might be relevant to what you just said, and I think it's actually going to be a very, it's going to tie very nicely into what we're talking about right now. Okay, and this will... excuse me, this is for Hales, but this is for everyone. Allow me to tell you a story. It's called The Fool's Journey. It has 22 chapters, each with its own cast of characters, its own story, its own conclusions. However, the main player is the most important character in this story, for they walk the path through each and every chapter, slipping in and out of all of the roles, concluding each having rewritten the chapter. At the conclusion of our epic, we find that our player is now transformed, having sculpted our narrative of truth, and a new story has emerged, one that is absolutely unique, yet absolutely universal. Who is this player, capable of such a feat as crafting this epic truth? You. You are the player, and the story is yours. So, you know, I was looking for some way to describe the tarot as like a bang snapshot, to be able to put something up, because YouTube keeps bugging me to have like a channel opening video or whatever. And so I thought this might be a way to do that, to kind of tell the story of what the tarot is. Because what it is this miracle. It's a book with 22 chapters, but infinite pages. And the fact that the pages change as we're reading it, because we participate in the crafting of the story. So when Hale says, I hope the chapter's coming to an end, first of all, numerically it is. We are now in the period of 10 of Pentacles, and that is the end of the tarot. And we are about to now start traveling back up and move to a different sort of phase, right? But now, we also have the ability at this point to recognize the truth, that we are always crafting that story every moment. We can always say, okay, well, the story's going to change. Because not only is the Ten of Pentacles the period that we're in, but that's the knowledge. The wisdom is what you do with that knowledge. And what you do is you take where you are and you apply it to that. You take red and you want purple, got to add some blue. So if you know that you're in an environment that's red, and you want purple, you know what you need to do to make that purple happen, which is to apply your blueness, right? And so we're moving into this period of or we're in the period of the Ten of Pentacles. And so now that we know where we are, it's sort of like the pinnacle of physical manifestation. What we can all do then is stop trying so hard to make things physically manifest. We're at that point already. It's reached its peak. So now what we need to do is to work with what's here and not try to create any longer, but rather try to know our will, which is essentially our color, our shape. And then that allows us to know how are we going to navigate the situation, okay? If you want purple and you're entering red and you're in a state of green, you're in trouble. Because what are you going to get? You're going to get brown, and brown and purple are not the same. That's not what you want, right? So you have to transform your energy. And so knowing where you are matters, because that allows you to tell the right story. You're telling the story anyway. You can't not tell this story. This is the point of the tarot. You are always making the change. Once you pop into a chapter, i.e. one of the majors, right now we're in Virgo, which is the Hermit, you get to tell the story of the Hermit for that period of time. And now you don't have a choice. You are telling it regardless. Now, you can be aware of that or not, and if you are, you get to participate, and that's fun, because now you're telling the story as the writer and the player at the same time. How cool. Or we don't. And then the story happens to us. Don't let that happen, because some of the cards are pretty bad, right? And you don't want to just let that happen to you. So that's what we're trying to do here, right? One of the ways that we can do that is to access that world. And how do we access that world? Through different vocabularies. The vocabulary of tarot, the vocabulary of color, the vocabulary of vibration, sound, music. And so, how we interplay and how we work within this situation that we're in. Each one of us has our wand. We call that root chakra. We call that soul or spirit. We call it our libido or sexuality. We call it fire. Right? Each one of us has our cup, which is our heart, our love, our want, right? It's a cup waiting to be filled. It's right. So that's want. And what is love but the desire for two to become one? It's the desire for connection. It's the state of want, right? Then there's our sword. Each one of us has the ace, right? Our mind. And now how we play these together is really important on what that Ace of Pentacles comes out to be. You know, I want to kind of do something here to really sort of drive this point home, because and then we'll move on to readings. The pentacle is separate. It is the product of these three playing, right? And so now if we are all sword and ignore cup and wand, what we're going to wind up with is being very offensive and very mechanical, very technological, very, non-human. If we're too much cup, watch out. Bad mental energy, bad, suffering psychologically and so on. If we are all wand, which driven by base desire, and 9 times out of 10 that manifests as addiction of some kind, compulsion addiction. And so, especially when it's combined with the cup. But that said, you get the idea here. What we're looking at is everything that exists is a play of these, and that is on the universal level. Everything that physically exists is a play of these together to make something new, right? But that also, macrocosm, microcosm, includes us. We are the play of these 4 things. And when we recognize and we go through the work of knowing them, know your wand. It's going to be a fun time when you do that. You feel pretty cocky and sexy and powerful, and you know your cup. That's a painful one. You're going to cry your eyes out. Know your sword. Know your pentacle. Do it in that order. The order matters. And when you're done, what you're going to be left with is your 10 of Pentacles. And when you get there, You're going to want to be in a paid position of sitting back and going, wow, that was a blast. Look what I made. Because the final thing here, and now we're going to end, is the fact that once you've reached the Ten of Pentacles, recognize the fact that the next step is that it all falls down. And we find ourselves in the position of the Tower, which resets the whole thing, and we're back to the Fool. So, let's use this beautiful gift that we've been given called the Tarot to make that walk a bit easier. So we can approach it and ask our, important questions to our personal current moment. And that's valuable. It's going to help to alleviate some curiosity or suffering or both or whatever. But we could also use it to access our soul talk, to the who we really are at the end of time, who's already written the story, knows how it ends, and is whispering it to us. We can hear that. And if we use it for that, just wow, right? And one of the things that we're going to be talking about later after a couple of readings is the relationship of the reader and the person coming to the reader with respect to the seeker and the guide. And who you are in that relationship determines the best way that you should approach that, so that the two of you can actually become something greater. And the goal being that the union of this relationship of a reader and a seeker creates a Ten of Pentacles. And it's a real thing that's created if you allow it. If you don't participate, that won't happen. But if you do, then it becomes a journey together through this whole story. And then we're getting to who you really are, okay? So that said, we're going to start some readings. I appreciate everybody who listened. It means a lot. I don't judge anyone who didn't. If you found any interest in what I'm doing, all I ask is that you write a little comment and like the video, and it makes a big difference. So let's begin the list here. And we'll start from the top. Encore was first in the room. Then we have Hales, Shika, Lauren, Yanvi. Okay, that's 5. Actually, that's perfect then. 5's a good number to sort of close the list real quick. And we'll open it back up after these 5. Okay. I might have to put that down after Lauren. Yeah, okay. Just a moment, sorry. Okay, great. Perfect. All right, so the deck I'm using tonight, if you came in a little bit after the beginning there, is Tarot of Ceremonial Magic. I do have multiple decks that I use, though, and so if there's a particular deck that you'd like, there's a fair chance I have it. I might not. There's 1 or 2 very major decks that I don't use. But and so if I don't, I don't. But otherwise, this is what I'm going to be using tonight. And so, that said, let's begin. I'm going to just center myself real quick, light a candle and some incense. And we're going to begin with Encore. So let's just get your name up to the top here and move the list forward. Okay. Great. First of all, thank you for popping in on the stream tonight. I appreciate it. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to want to do is to locate your birth card. Okay, and so the way to do that is to just either pop in the month and day of your birth, or you can locate it on the wheel here by locating your birthday and then finding the card associated with it on the outside wheel. while you're doing that, I'll light the incense. And actually, there's a the one I'm using right now is a nice bright purple, and it just has this great energy next to the green. I have a green case for the alchemical tarot I have sitting, you know, it's I keep it in the case, and so I have the purple next to it. From my perspective, from the way I'm looking, it's really it's just those colors mixed together are nice, that purple and green. I like the purple incense. This is a bamboo candle, handmade from a local person that is a very creative, just loves to create, and the candles are a great thing to create. Like I just really... There's something special too about a scented candle that's done right, because, you know, I've always said that the more senses that are touched during an experience, the more effective, right? And, you know, to light a candle touches the sense of sight, but if it's scented properly, it touches too, which is really great. And then you can have the experience too of just kind of rubbing your hand over the flame, and so then you get the, you know, you can feel the warmth, and so just it becomes a greater experience the more senses you put together. And so a scented candle allows for that. So, gel candles, yeah. You know, I'm sure that there's some kits available out there. I went through a process once. It came with these. It was kind of cheap because it was sort of like everything was done for you. You know, I wanted to feel like like an alchemical kind of thing, you know, making my candle, and it just didn't work. It was just sort of, I put this in, put that in, stir, and it sort of like, I don't know, hardened, but yeah, that was no fun. It's kind of like an alcohol candle at the end of the day. Okay. So, let us begin. July 18th. 4 of Cups. Now we're also not only is it 4 of Cups, but this is as well the moon in Cancer. So it's not just Cancer, but there's an extra influence that is lent by the Deacon, right? And so instead of just Cancer, it's the moon in Cancer, right? And so the next time somebody asks you your sign, you can say, I'm the moon in Cancer, right? Okay, and that's the 4 of Cups, so let's pop that out for you. There we go. So, and actually, was there something, let me just look at what you typed, so I don't want to miss anything in the chat. Okay. So, when the 4 of Cups lands in your birth section, it's very similar if you've seen any of my mind, body, soul readings. This is kind of the soul section, right? The birth card sort of is the shape of the karmic environment at the time of your birth, and it imprints on you in kind of a way that informs your decisions, but I don't mean to say that affects willpower or it affects free will, but what I mean by that is that there's certain things in your life that are easier to you or come to you easily compared to others, right? And there's One example is, in your case, because yours is the Four of Cups, you kind of are impatient for, or have an intolerance toward injustice. Like, you see things, and if they bother you, they really bother you. Like, you can't just let it go. And that's actually a positive. It can be a negative, and we'll talk about that in a sec, but it's mostly a positive, because we need those people. The world needs people to say, wait a minute, that's not okay, and I'm going to do something about it. Like, most of us go, that's not okay. I'm guilty of that. Some of us say, that's not okay, and there's something I'm going to do something about that. Sun in Cancer, Moon Libra. Okay, well, first of all, let's look at your Sun in Cancer. This is the Sun Sign book. If anyone's been on the channel, you know that we're about to read something funny. So let's see. First of all, the title for Cancer, The Oedipal Complainer. That's funny. So this is a very specific connotation, right? This is a Shakespearean thing, right? So let's test the room real quick. Who knows what that meant? Who's familiar with Oedipus? He fell in love with his mother. So the Oedipus complainer is basically somebody that complains to their mom. Anyway, so yeah. Now that's obviously a joke. You know, it's the book is a joke, but that's just, it's a funny quality. So basically, you know, they're basically saying anyone who's a sun sign is a complainer. And you're as well. Let me put this up here. Four of Cups. And also, your major is ruled by the Chariot. Okay. The Chariot is the major for Cancer. And now pop it up on top here, just to kind of make sure that you have a. Where's Chariot? There you go. And let's use some graphic design principle and make this a bit more readable. So pretty. Okay, there we go. All right, so what we're looking at when you take this idea of like the intolerance, there's also, and this is very important, and anybody who else falls under the Four of Cups, this is a biggie. This can like stop your growth. It can affect relationships if you take it to the wrong place. Because what happens is that you just sort of become cynical and disdainful and have like a general malady for your environment, and that can be bad because that can come off in a negative way, and that can turn, in respect to the period of time that we're in right now, into complete regret when you're in this 10. So your 10 of Pentacles would be a period of regret because you wasted time looking at the bad stuff, right? Like, it's kind of like missing the forest for the trees and then looking back going, man, it's too late, right? And you don't want to be there. But so the lesson here applied to the Hermit, and the relevance here is the fact that this period of time is going to be easy for you, because it's already easy for you to have no tolerance for the injustice, to be affected and like not be okay with it, to take the time to do the work of the Hermit, to look inward and go, wait a minute, okay, so now the cup that I'm ignoring, because it's going to be just like everything else, maybe I should take that cup, right? Or at least be open to look what's inside and then make a decision. Am I prepared mentally, physically, emotionally for what's in the cup, or do I want to avoid it for whatever reason? But the point is that the world is trying to give you something and you're ignoring it because you're so frustrated with what's always been. Why? Because it's kind of your nature to do that. It's sort of like, if you're the one that's the justice warrior because you're just sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you're actually going to get up and do something about it, as opposed to being like everyone else who just talks, that can also lead to a place of not accepting the truth if it looks like it's coming from something similar to the things that you're avoiding. And so you got to be careful not to do that. And because of the period of time that we're in right now, the work of the Hermit will lead you to a good Ten of Pentacles, where you can look back and go, okay, I learned from this, and so now rather I'm gonna take this Four of Cups as a welcome opportunity to grab it anytime it's offered, as opposed to say no. Okay, so that's always that, you know. And the Chariot is just a beautiful lesson with respect to who's driving and who's steering. Yeah, and it's going to happen again, because it's kind of the nature of how our cycle works, right? It's sort of, we all kind of go through this ebbs and flows. It's never exact when or how, but you can kind of get some insight, you know, if you know how to look. So, yeah, I hope that was insightful. I mean, if there's, do you have any questions about anything we talked about, Encore, or is there anything in particular that you wanted to look into that we didn't touch on? I don't believe that you had a particular instance. I'm not sure. Sarav, how's it going? Tell you what, let me pop you on the list. The list is closed, but not for you. Let's see here. Okay. Now it's really closed in immediate though. But okay, so yes, Encore. If there's anything else that you'd like to look into, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to move on. But you know, there's an important lesson here with your particular circumstance, the Chariot and the Four of Cups, because, you know, part of what's going on with the Chariot, I talk very often about the different layers of meaning. The Chariot refers to movement and motion, and also specifically directing one's will, right? That's kind of like the big picture meaning. And you can also look at the idea of like Cancer and where that comes into play in respect to the sign. However, there's also the inner meaning of that, which is the idea that there's the person that is steering, and then there's the two animals that are the one actually doing the pulling. And now those are not the same. And so you have to kind of enroll the animals in a sense, like if they choose not to move, the Chariot's not going to move. And if you choose not to steer it, then it's going to run off a cliff, right? So there does need to be a relationship, a communication between the two animals in the front and the driver of the Chariot, right? And now, let's look at that then as a metaphor. So that makes sense. And so maybe it's like, you know, the idea of the base desire compared to the heart, or the mind compared to the heart. And there's some truth in that. And then there's the inner meaning, which is the idea basically that communication is always taking place, and that you're the one being fooled. And what you really need to do is think about, who are you in this circumstance? Are you actually the one that's steering, or are you one of these animals, or are you both? Or are you all three? So let's take a look here. All right, interview, great. All right, let's take a look at that. Sure. Okay, so let's do this so I don't confuse myself later. Great. So now let's take a look. The interview was on September 7th. Okay, so I was going to ask when the interview was, and you already answered that question. Okay, so it was recently. All right, so that was during the period of the 6. Okay, the 6 of Wands. Now let me show you the 6 of Wands real quick, because there we go. there's a couple of things happening right here. And actually, I'm going to pop up the 5, too, for a reason. Now, here's the 5. The 5 of Wands shows a bunch of people, right? And what are they doing? They're up there. And actually, more specifically, they kind of look like children, right? And the children are up there, and they're, you know, kind of whacking at each other with these sticks. And now the lesson here is the idea that they're vying for who's the best. That's the job interview, right? Like, which one's the best is that idea, okay? Then we have, moving into, after that period, the 6, which is that one of them was victorious. And then the other ones, see the other wands in the back there? Those are the 5. Count the wands, 5, right? So you have all these people vying, and then somebody else walks in, which is the 6 of wand. And they have a wreath on their head. Okay? See that wreath on their head? That wreath is a very powerful symbol. What that wreath represents is total victory. It represents the Ouroboros. It represents, and that's why it's on the head of this individual as a crown. Success, victory. They won. Okay? And that's an important distinction here. Plus, there's also a wreath on the wand, meaning that their will also succeeded. So there's an important lesson here for those who have ears to hear. That you, the body, and you, the will, were in accordance and both succeeded. So it's very good magic there. There's very good energy. There's very good kind of mojo toward your that exchange. Now, we have to look at how these kind of interact, right? Because what we're looking at here is you're in the period of 4 of Cup always. And so there's this idea of having that passion that comes with that intolerance emotionally. Okay? And then you have the energy of, let's jump back to that image, the 6. And so when you combine the 4 of Cup with the 6, what you do is you have the idea that if you're able, and I'm going to pull some cards here in a sec, but if you're able to, under emotional stress, accept the gift, then it puts you in a much better position for your for the 6 to happen. Because again, the 10 is a very good period of time that we're in right now. The 10 is a period of time where you know, you get to, if the work was done properly, and share that, spread that, which is implied in that card with the other 5 and, you know, that are looking up to you now at this point. There's kind of like a reverence. So I'm just going to do one more shuffle and then a cut. Let's take it out of the middle. Okay. So because now your question is when they're going to contact you. Right? Okay. Now, the 10 of Wand, I know this card very well. This is my birth card, so I know this card very well. But the 10 of Wand refers to carrying a burden. Basically, what this is saying is that you need to kind of let go. Meaning that you seem to be really worried about it. Perhaps you were thinking that you were gonna hear sooner, you know? But that said, I would say, depending upon how you achieved, how you dealt with the 4 of Cup, will determine how the circumstance goes here. Because what we're talking about in the 10 of Wand, it's not a positive or a negative card, the 10 of Wand. It is the first stage before will is out of the question and emotion takes place. So it's like there's serious. It's like the last drive. It's like the last that you have physically before emotion takes over, because you have nothing left physically. That's one of the reasons that card is painted that way or drawn that way. And let's pop it out. I think that it might be useful. Oh, there we go. I'm sorry. One of the reasons that this card looks like this Ten of Wands here looks like that is because it implies that, like, this person is carrying a lot, and he's eventually going to lose his physical ability to carry these. Because what the Ten of Wands implies, very similar to what I talked about with the Ten of Pentacles being the last card of the tarot, this is the last card of the wand, and we're moving into the cup at that point. So that means that it's like the end of physical and then emotional. But so what this is saying, though, is that there's a lot of weight here. And so what I would say with respect to this is there seems to be a level of success, meaning that you're probably going to get the position, but it seems like there's going to be a heavy amount of responsibility. And so be prepared for that. And how you handle that level of responsibility is going to determine success or failure here. Because if you allow yourself to be overtaken emotionally, because you feel like you have been wronged, or you feel like you haven't gotten your fair share, or that you're taking on too much, then that resentment won't look good. My interview is good. That's why I'm looking forward. Yeah, no, and it actually, I get a very good vibe about that. And it's going to really come down to the fact that, the 10 here, well, sure you are. Yeah, no, and that's kind of the idea. Here's the implication of the 10. The implication of the 10 of Pentacles or wand rather, is the fact that it's a willful act. You're choosing to do it. So it's not like it's being thrust upon you. You're kind of saying, I'm going to give it my all. Now, the question is why? Everyone has a reason why. You want to be liked? A lot of people do the 10 of wand because they want to make money. And so, and the harder they work, the more they think they'll make. Now, that doesn't always work out that way, but that's what they think. And sometimes it does work out that way. So, but there's a lot of reasons that kind of thing happens. But so let's do this, though. What I'm going to do, just for the heck of it, I'm going to pull a random card with the intent of the action card. What should you do next? Because basically what I've just offered you is what you should know, but forget that. Let's, what should you do with respect to this position? To either prepare yourself or to allow yourself to know how can you best take advantage of the opportunity that you're about to walk into, right? Let's go here. Oh, you know what? I have those cards in the way. Let me move those before I flip it over. Okay. Okay, so this is the action card. This is what should Anchor do now, tonight, tomorrow, to help make this circumstance be a karmic one. Let the circumstance be like allowing you to move forward, as opposed to you being carried. Sort of you taking control, as opposed to it. You tell the story instead of just allowing the story to happen. The Two of Discs. The Two of Discs means a few things. Change. The change is positive. It typically means immediate, right? And it also is in accordance. One of the reasons that it's the Two of Pentacles here is each one represents a different version of you. That's why it's in the Ouroboros. There's your real self. There's your physical self. There's the you that was born in the beginning of time and is existing right now at the end, waiting for you to catch up. And then there's the physical you, which has a name and is interested about their career. And those two things are in accordance. And so the action that needs to be taken is allow that to maintain, keep that in accordance. So now the energy we're talking about is Capricorn and Jupiter, or Jupiter and Capricorn. Doing what you know is right and being joyous about that. Why is Jupiter happy? because he's fearless, because he's the biggest. It's like, know that what you're bringing to this situation is your confidence, but do it practically. Don't be, it's not red and red, it's red and green. And the idea is of fire contained in earth. And so it's powerful, but not fast. It's controlled. Capricorn, practical. Okay? So that's your action card. Maintain the connection between your true self and your physical self. And it's going to allow this to continue and drive. Okay? So I hope that helped. And if you found any value, please like the video. It's a little click and it makes a huge difference. And consider a comment. Comments are the reason that the channel grows. And without them, it's slow. Okay, so thank you so much. And anytime you want to pop back in and circle back, we can talk about this. And when you get the offer, let me know. And we can talk about from that stage, based on the date they want you to start, we can get some guidance, okay? So just when you get the offer, come back in the channel, let me know, I got the offer. What is my, my future based on the date that they want me to start, okay? And so great. Okay, so let me refresh the list here. Hales, if you're still here, give me a thumbs up or a hey, because you're next. And here's how it works in the channel here. If I call on you and you don't happen to be here, and so you don't answer, then I don't throw you out. What I do is I just put you on the back of the list, right? And so that once we get back around, if you are here, you can take advantage of the reading, and if not, then you kind of missed out, and maybe tomorrow or next time, or hopefully you got answers on another channel, and that, we can go that route. So, great, okay. Let me just make sure all this is sort of reset. No, okay, that's not. No, okay, good. Just want to make sure I have everything straight. Great, okay. Excellent. Okay, Hales, what's up? Great. So you are next. I'm going to need just a moment, though, to heat up my coffee, and we'll be right back. But this is the list, incidentally. Oh, that fell out. Okay, I'm sorry. There we are. Okay, so this is the list. And this is going to be the list when I get back in just a couple of minutes. I did about an hour and a half here, and so I just need to stretch my back, heat up my coffee, and I'll be right back. Great. Okay, that's a great question. I love that. That's a great question. Sure. Okay, awesome. All right, great. So we're gonna hit that first as soon as I get back. Let's do this. I don't remember your birthday, Hales. So if you can pop your month and day in, and then I'll grab your birth card, and then we'll go from there. Or perhaps, you know what? Maybe I'll just leave the wheel up rather than the normal coming back screen. So I'll just leave up the wheel. And then let me put this up. Okay. Okay. All right. So then anyone who would like to can grab their birth card from here while I'm away. Okay. Now, incidentally, October 8th is the Three of Swords. Pop that on there. Three of Swords. Okay, great. And the Three of Swords is also, incidentally, under the period of Libra, which we're entering right now. And Libra, I'm sure anyone can guess what the major card is for Libra. So everybody think about that while I'm gone. I'll be back in a couple minutes, and see if you can figure out what the major arcana for Libra is. And I'll be right back. Back. So let's jump over. There we go. Okay. So justice. Now, you know, it's kind of one of those obvious ones, right? You know, justice is the scales. It's the card of kind of the rules, right? The worldview that the world wants us to have. But it's not a bad spot, and you'll notice mathematically there's some confusion here, and maybe I should find it in the spotlight deck, because I just want to touch on that. Let's find justice. And this is clearly based on the Thoth deck. Those familiar with Thoth will see the similarities in the artwork. Let's see. that back up. Okay. So we see here that you have Justice is listed at number 11. Okay. In the Rider-Waite system. Okay. That's right. You got it. Thanks for popping in. But we'll see that it's numbered 8 in the Thoth system, right? Or in the Golden Dawn, the esoteric hermetic system, basically. And so why is it numbered differently, right? Like that's a contentious subject amongst readers as well as academics in the space of tarot and astrology, because that switch was done based on what was an intentional blind that was thrown in by Eliphas Levi, which I speak about a lot. Anybody who's passively read this piece of text that I have up on the screen occasionally, Eliphas Levi is one of the people that is responsible for bringing a lot of this knowledge to the Golden Dawn, and that was then, refined and polished and corrected, and then was responsible for the fact that we have this in its current state. Crowley noticed that the numbering was incorrect after kind of doing some work, and corrected the issue. So that said, you'll notice the numbering system has changed after the original. Now, does that matter to most people? Typically not. But it does matter very much with respect to what I talked about today, in respect to the order, and that order having like a holographic meaning that if is not correct, it kind of throws the math off, right? Libra happens after Virgo, and if Justice were swapped with, we would see a lion right now as opposed to the scales, and that's just right. Leo belongs where it belongs, and the scales belong where they belong, and so it made sense. And so that said, it was really just correcting that mistake, which was not a mistake. It was done on purpose, so that basically those who were using the tarot for magical purposes would have gotten their magic wrong. Like, unless you remember and were told the truth, you were thrown off. So yeah, that's why the Justice is listed here as 11, and if I reference it in a lot of newer decks have adjusted their math to represent the correction, right? So yeah. So Rob, you're next, there's a few people in front of you rather. Shiko was here long before Lauren Yanvi, but you're on the list. Yeah, you're on the list. So. That said, your birth card, let's pop your birth card up. Okay, which is in 8 of October. Let's jump here. There we go. Okay. So, we've gone through this before, so I'm not going to burden you with the reading again. We're going to talk about specifically thinking about the change in your job and as far as finances, right? Based on how you phrased the question is actually very telling, isn't it? You phrased the question of, will they come right soon, which means they're not right now. And so let's look at the why. And so what I think is appropriate, yeah, right. I'm unfortunately, I'm sure there's a couple of people that can identify with that. But let's take a look at that. So what I think is appropriate is going to be a past, present, future type situation with respect to finances. So, first thing I'd like to do is to take a general card first. What the card is going to do is to get a sense of, because again, there's these 4 stages that even on a macro scale, it talks about the universe, and it talks about creation of all this, but it also speaks about the individual play of these manifestations in our life. And so we're talking about right now the pentacle, right? And how this brings the things that you want physically into the world. Okay, that's what we're speaking about right now. And so what I would like to get a sense of is, what is the overall environment of your pentacle currently, so that we can see what are we working in, what is the environment that we're working in, so that we now know, is there something that needs to change on yours, or do you need to remain patient and it will change for you? Let's take a look at that, and then we'll know what to expect here. You know, do you need to like really start doing some dramatic action, or do you need to kind of do nothing and it'll come around? So let's find out. Okay. So this first card is going to be the environment. Okay. The Six of Sword. Six of Sword is great. Success that has been earned. Crowley calls the word science. Now, one of the reasons he does that is because of the astrological. It's Mercury in Aquarius. Mercury, you know, as we know, is another representation of Mercury is Hermes, Mercurius, but Hermes. You know, he was the one that gave science and mathematics to humans to kind of like stick it to the gods. And what this refers to is that earned success is doesn't just mean that you're about to come into success. It means that you can if you earn it. And so let me pop the card up. I'm gonna replace it with there we go. And sword, 6. Yeah, okay. So now this is an idea of the person that is well, there's a lot of motivations for why they've packed up and left, but basically the idea here is that they've made the decision to go on their own, so that when their work that they do, they can benefit from, as opposed to everybody benefiting or somebody benefiting. And now here's an interesting sort of inner meaning of this card as well, is the idea that those are swords. And what that refers to is that those are mental objects, those are ideas, those are and so basically there's something you've had inside of you that you've considered doing on your own that you haven't shared with others, or you didn't bring it to your jobs or things like that, and that you're prepared to maybe. Was it from Marseille? It was actually earlier than that. We can take a look at if Marseille had that problem. Actually, I can grab one of many examples. Actually, I have the alchemical Marseille from Robert M. Place right here. It's time for you to share these ideas with the world, and you're going out to do that now. Let's take a look at the past and the future, right? So basically what we're going to look at is what led you to this point of packing up the swords, or considering packing up the swords, and then what can you expect based on that. And again, I'm not sure, this is for Uncle Noob, I'm not sure that it was a mistake. I believe that it was intentionally done wrong. so that the uninitiated would not have the actual answer. And not only that, but it would also allow you to identify the uninitiated by virtue of the fact that they don't have the correct knowledge, right? It's kind of like the password. Anybody who walks in the door and pays the dues is given the password, but they don't have the password to the inner sanctum. And if somebody in the inner sanctum asks them the password, they're going to tell them the password, and that's the password to the outer sanctum. And so they know right away, this person, it doesn't belong here, right? It's the same idea. You know? There was a lot of that thrown into the original knowledge. A lot of all kinds of weird... they switched up the... There's also... they switched up the elements between fire and water. Or fire and air. The sword was fire and the wand was air. So it was all kinds of blinds thrown in for that reason. Actually, let's not flip it yet. Okay. So, what we're looking at here is what got you to this point. And if you do nothing, where is it leading? This is the Lovers. We're going to talk about that. It's one of the most misunderstood cards in the tarot, if not the most misunderstood. Probably Death. Death gets misunderstood a lot. And then this is If Nothing Changes, which I'm going to wait to flip. Suspense. So, because here's the future. Okay. What led you here is the Lovers. Now, what is the Lovers? The Lovers means a couple of things on the surface. A partnership, a union, right? But it also refers to each person having their own kind of agenda, right? You know, the Lovers comes from the idea of... in the deeper level is the idea of wanting that connection for a very specific reason, right? The Rider-Waite version is actually, I should probably pop it up because it's the story of Adam and Eve, which is one that we're all familiar with to some degree. And why I popped the card up is because, you know, you'll see here you've got Adam and Eve there, and now look where everybody's looking. Adam's looking at Eve. Eve's looking at God. The snake's looking at Eve. And the whole thing has this sort of connotation of the fall, right? This temptation and the fall. So there's the idea, the initial meaning is love or connection, but the second one is this idea of temptation. Everybody's tempted. He's suddenly looking at her going, and he didn't do that before. He never had temptation. And then she's now put in this weird spot, right? I have a sneeze coming on, pardon me. Sorry. Now, there's a deeper meaning than that as well, right? So there's the surface meaning of a connection or a partnership. Then there's the deeper meaning that it refers to temptation. And then there's the inner sanctum meaning, which is the temptation was a function of the necessity of the fall, and that fall leads to redemption. So it's the idea that this crap that you just went through, that's getting you all stressed out, leading you to the point that you want to actually go and do your own thing, was necessary to finally motivate you to go do your own thing. So it's good. Okay? And I hope that made sense. I hope that. And now, what this final card is a circle. Isn't that how it works? There's always, whenever you have more than two people, it's not an even dynamic. There's going to be motivations that are greater in power. There's always going to be a giver and a taker. And then there's, and then it goes even further than that, because then there's this power dynamic that comes into effect that you can't really avoid. So now here, there's interesting dynamic too of the 6. Let me get rid of the Lovers. And pop back up the 6. All right, the woman is in a state of shame. All right, the woman's in a state of shame. She's just like, doesn't know. Because why is she dressed like that? It's not because of the weather. And he's doing what he has to do because of that, right? Like, he's like, and she's like, doesn't want to be seen. Now, let's take a look here. Here's the thing that's important. All right, let's just take a moment. Let's just do a momentary sort of, what do I have a name for it, and it already, because it's something I just recently started doing and I forgot the name of it. Or random act of wisdom. Sorry. Random act of wisdom. So, you did something. It happened. This is not the last time you're going to do something. It's not the last time someone's going to do something to you. But here's the important point, and it's something that came up even just in this particular reading, and this goes for anybody. You have to be able to forgive, not only yourself, but the people that hurt you. Why? Because it's not their fault. Why? Because they're fulfilling destiny. This thing that happened, whether you did it, they did it, somebody got hurt, however it occurred, what you were actually doing is playing your role in your story. And you can't redeem unless you fall. You can't achieve the star without the tower. So, mourn the loss. Don't justify the behavior, but move on from it. And, don't identify with the past person. The behavior's done, and you get to move forward once you've forgiven yourself, and recognize that the way to do that, the vehicle that's used to achieve that level of self-forgiveness, is the recognition that you are fulfilling your destiny, and all of you are going to grow through that circumstance, okay? And so give yourself a moment to just take a breath and recognize that it was supposed to happen, and you can't beat yourself up. Okay. All right, so that said, let's take a look at what this card is, because I know everybody wants to know, right? This card is what's going to happen if, based on how everything just is right now. Beautiful. Gorgeous. Let's pop up the Ten of Cups really quick so that you can see it, because it's just beautiful. Why redemption was necessary in this circumstance, I'm not sure, but it was, and the outcome of that is very good. This trip, packing up the swords, is part of this process. but so is this. And so the ending is good. The story ends in a good way. And now keep in mind, this is the important thing, and the stage that you're in right now is very significant, because this is the stage where you get to decide what these cups are filled with. And if you're not careful, this can very easily turn illusionary. It could turn unnourishing, right? Like, imagine if all of these cups were Red Bull. That's not good. So, you know, obviously during this period of time, just make sure that you, like, there's certainly an opportunity for abundance and joy, as long as those cups are filled with that. So, you know, good times, bad times, hard times, whatever the case, what you need to start doing is forgiving. And what you need to start doing is being open to that forgiveness yourself first. You can't fake it. Yeah, it's not possible. All right, so let me just scoot this over. I hope that was insightful. Everybody here who's been in the channel a couple times knows what I'm about to say. If you found any value in anything I do here, all I ask is that you give the video a like and consider a comment. Comments are a big deal toward, you know, trying to get me in front of more people on the algorithm. You know, it makes a big difference to how I'm seen by Google. Okay, so let's just put this up here. I'm glad. Yeah, staying grounded is one thing, but that's not what you need to do right now. No, you do not need to stay grounded right now. What you need to do is get moving. And what's going to allow you to do that is to forgive. And you know, there's a lot of circumstances here as well. I mean, you're talking about the effect that it had on a lot of people, right? And then the ripple effect that had on the people in their lives, because it changed their behavior and so on in that ripple. But now what you can do is to put everyone on a path of healing by you starting. And even if the love isn't what it was, because it can't ever be that again, you can at least allow it to evolve into something where you have some at least growth together. Because don't forget, whatever the relationship is, it's going to ebb and flow and evolve in its life anyway, right? You know, how many times have we been one thing and then something else and something else? Like we jump in between, you know, a lover to a father. You know, we jumped from like a boyfriend to a husband, you know, like these types of things, and then back to something else. And that's just the way that this works. So, but the point is to forgive ourselves and to recognize that at the end of this process, we're fulfilling that trajectory, and it's set in the beginning of time by us. So our job is to help navigate it. I mean, basically, you know, from a free will perspective, the end is written, and so's the beginning. It's the middle that we get to rewrite, though. So, all right. So, Shika, if you're here, just give me a hey. Let me know you're still here. If not, Lauren, you're up next. Lauren, if you're still here, same thing. Say hey. Yambi, Surab. So right, that's where I am. Hales and I are in the same place. I am, yes, very willfully single, and I plan on staying that way for as long as possible. You know, I want to love I'm in a slightly different place than you. I'm done loving myself. I'm just loving everybody. Like, I'm just, that's where I'm at. But same idea. Like, I am not responsible for anybody's feelings. You know, nobody's responsible for mine. Hey, okay, so Lauren's here. You know, and that's okay. And staying, that's one way to stay grounded, because, you know, obviously when we do have that connection, then if it's real, if it's not selfish, then we care about that person and their feelings, and we should be able to have the energy to work toward their happiness. And if we're not in a place to do that, it's not fair to anyone. That's why rebound relationships suck, because you can't just call it what it is, which is that the both of you need to just kind of like get pent up physical energy out, but then you latch on emotionally, and that's not going to work, right? Oh, sure, a year is nothing. That was a big deal. Healing begins when we actually take the step toward it. But yeah, that said, though, I'm interested to see how this progresses with your expression of this new courage that's going to come from this. Because the fact is that, you know, obviously you're feeling insecure right now, and you should. It's like out of comfort zone land, right? But that is the place that growth occurs, and it's the only place growth can occur, is in these transitional phases. So, and we're about to enter one. Like, literally within days is the beginning of fall, which is a transitional phase, right? It's not winter or summer. It's the beautiful middles, spring and fall. So, very quickly, Sheikah, if you're still here, let me know. If not, then Lauren, you're next. Am I lagging? Looks like I am. Yep. Yes, there's a slight delay. Right, okay. If you want to look at that further too, that's like out of the scope of you know, a quick reading on a live stream, I am available, and I guess I should take this moment to shamelessly plug myself, since I haven't all night. I come to this from a level of like, to say seriousness is an understatement. I consider this a holy connection, and I would hope that you do too. And if you do, then this can be something much greater than anybody expects. And so even with a $1 reading, I give it the same level of seriousness that I do, you know, my private consults, which are very in depth, like really in depth. So that said, anybody who does need to look into something a little further than what's out of the scope of a personal reading on the internet, whether it's getting into a more intimate subject that's not really good for public discourse, or for training, or you know, for getting really down to the heart of a problem, I'm available. You can either call me at the number down there, or text, or you can email or direct message, and we can, you know, go from there. But that said, yeah, so if you wanted to look into this, if it's a big decision and you just want a different perspective as you go through these decisions, I'm happy to work with you on that. And I appreciate you coming back. I know you've been on the stream a few times, and I really appreciate it. It's when I saw your name, it was kind of cool. Great. All right, so I think we can all come to the conclusion that Sheikah is no longer here. So I'm going to just put Sheikah's name on the back of the list. Okay. Great. All right. Great. All right, so then, let's see, Lauren. Let's put you up there. Sorry, I'm just going to make sure this stuff's set up here so that we're ready. good. Okay, excellent, good. Alrighty. So, very quickly, Sarav, if you're here, please say hey. Yanvi, if you're here, say hello. Sika, just let me know that you're here. There is no reason to be nervous. But that's good. That just means that you're taking it seriously, you know? Like I talked about during the beginning of the stream here with respect to the connection between a reader and a seeker. It's a big deal. And if you take it seriously, it's, you know, it could be something very special. So, yeah, I think I'm going to be wrapping up the stream here soon. So, I'm just going to close the list at this point. All right, and Lauren, you'll be my last reading. Actually, let me just, yeah. So, that said then, let's do this. Okay, awesome. So, is there anything in particular that you wanted to read about? Or do you want to just do something kind of general right now, and then we can get together privately, or what do you want to do? You tell me. To be honest, I'm getting a little tired, so I don't want to get too deep as far as, like, if there's a certain subject you want to talk about. Because I want to, make sure I'm in the right place, and it's been a long day. It's quarter after 4. But so what are your thoughts? What do you want to do? Let's start here, actually. I'm going to pull you a random card from the Deviant Moon. I always love his color. There's something special about his faces. I don't know, just his artwork in general is really, really pretty. So just interestingly, let's just use this. Like if we look at the Queen of Cup and where the Queen of Cup lies on this wheel here. This is the secret cup, the wheel, right? We have the Deacons, and then we have the good stuff. Okay, so let's just pop that out. There we go. That's a little better. So, first of all, the Queen of Cups is the period of time that basically starts in Gemini and then moves into Cancer. It's the period of time of basically Sun in Gemini and then ending in Mercury in Cancer. That colorful outer ring of planets is a little bit different. That's actually the ruler of the sign, so that's not the ruler for the Deacon. That's a slightly different circumstance. What is your birthday? Or month and day? Don't need the year, but the month and day. And I'll shuffle in the meantime. Okay. Let's take a look. Oh, Two of Swords. The Moon in Libra. Okay. September 28th. Yes, Two of Swords. Okay. Give me just a moment. Okay, save that. Now, I just want to point out, because again, a lot of people ask, at least those with the wherewithal after studying for a while, finally it dawns on them and they think to themselves, where did the meanings for the small cards come from? And, you know, like we just talked about, the Two of Swords also represents the moon in Libra, right? Now let's take a look at the Two of Swords again and see if we can see in the symbol of this card the moon in Libra. Sure can, right? There's the moon right on top. The moon is actually visible in the card, and we also have the idea of Libra with respect to the balance, the two swords, right? Like it's inherently built into the symbol here of the idea of balance. And also, if you'll notice, the sword appears in Justice, which is the, you know, the card of the major. Let's pop that up here. There we go. Okay, so Justice. And let's get the Two of Swords. Oops. There we go. Okay. Great. And get rid of that 6. Okay, so oh my gosh, what have I done? Here we go. Okay, almost. Okay, there you go. So like I talked about in the beginning of the stream, you know, with respect to the order of the cards and the if you put power to a circuit, that electron is going to flow on that circuit exactly where that wire is, right? Like it's not going to like come off the wire and then come back, whatever the case may be. Even when it arcs, it's a very small space that it arcs, and it's always arcing back to itself. It doesn't leave, it always comes back. Anyway, long story short, there's a path that energy goes through our lives, and that ends at, the end point is the Ten of Pentacles. And one of the ways that we can symbolize that in our thinking is that it is the point where all the things that are created in the higher world actually now physically manifest. It's the final point on the wheel. It's the final point on the tree at the bottom with the 4 colors. It's the manifest universe, right? Everything above that is not physically manifest. It's our either mind or spirit, but it's not. We don't have it. It's not accessible to us because it's not physically real. We have to create it in a sense through our participation in this process. Now the two, so many ways that card can be looked at, and we've talked about this before with respect to the masks that we wear and the fact that we can hold multiple ideas without identifying with either. And, you know, interestingly, this is a state that you need to kind of be in when you're approaching divinity. Because we need to ensure that we stay out of our own ways intellectually to allow the flow of not creative energy, but archetypal. Archetypal energy is the idea of one. Creative, or two. Let's use 2 as a better example. The archetypal energy of 2 is just a concept in your mind of a grouping of objects greater than one that are similar, right? It's just an idea. But then emotionally, 2 means love or connection or desire or want. And then we can take it to an intellectual level, and then we can, you know, which is a totally different symbol of 2 and all these things. But ultimately, what we're trying to do here is to allow, and this is interesting when it comes to justice, that these two are so similar, is to allow, not balance willfully, but rather balance by virtue of the fact that we let the world be, that we know our role in it. And the way that we do that is that we don't, is that we participate, that we don't just allow, some people say, like, don't, how do I put this? Karmically, basically, it's already set, it's going to happen, and if we try to intervene too much, that we get in the way. And so we need to just, like, let it happen. And I disagree with that. I think that we need to participate in that process. It's this weird dichotomy of the fact that we are at the end of time. The story has been told. But, like I said in the beginning, the story has been told from the respect that the beginning is written and the end is written, but we're the ones writing it in between. So you have to kind of resist the compulsion. Like, as a reader especially, we sort of take this idea of, let me get out of my way and take in others' energies, and so you stay in this blank place on purpose. And it's easy for you to do that. You're actually able to. It's easy because this is falling in your birth. And so it's not going to be difficult for you to find that state. One thing you do definitely need to do is to resist the compulsion to justify everything. Like, I have a way of doing that where personally, and I'm not saying this is with you, but just personally, I have the way of, like, I want everyone to be happy. And that's not possible, but I'm going to try. It's just the way I am. And so if I walk into an argument, my initial inkling is to agree with everybody and make sure everybody agrees that everybody should be agreeing. And that doesn't always work, right? Like, I justify what you're saying, I justify what you're saying, I try to convince you of them, I try to convince them of you, and I want to sort of be that in between that tries to find peace. You're a little different, right? You would walk into that situation and I think see the truth and kind of in your heart go, wait a minute, one of you's wrong. Now, how you approach that after the fact, how you communicate that is different, but in your heart, it's, I walk through life going, oh, it's not his fault. And maybe I should try to convince the person that he hurt that it's not his fault, right? But I don't know, I get the sense here that in your mind you go, no, that wasn't right. And that is kind of where justice comes from, because it's sort of fairness or not. I think we all do, to a degree, right? At least in the cases, for instance, of like a love interest or something that we want. When we're in the state of want, we can justify all kinds of behavior. Whether it's a job or an individual in our lives or friends that help us to feel good about ourselves, whatever the case may be. And there's things that'll pop up as red flags, and we'll go, but I'll just allow for that because XYZ reason. But we all kind of do that. And there's other ideas here, but that's the basic gist, at least currently, of what is relevant here. And it also comes down to this idea of the 10. The 10 is all kinds of opportunity, but it's also sort of the end, like the chance that is gone. So now is the time to do the hermit work. If you do the hermit work, as we enter this new phase, right, which is actually cool for you because it's kind of like entering your birth period, you're going to be prepared for that. And now, because of the fact that you sort of have this blank identity, so to speak, it's going to be easier for you to plop something on there. And now what do? Like, who should you become? Because you do have the choice, the option, the decision every moment of who you're going to become. Do you either maintain and perpetuate what you've been, or do you say, oh, you know what, let's actually stop. look in and then say, who am I really? And then be that, right? And when you're that, all kinds of good stuff happens, like all kinds of good stuff. And here's the fun part: you've already taken the step on the spiritual path, and so there's no stepping off of that road once you're on it. The momentum has begun, and there's no stopping it. So it's cool because things have already begun to happen. All these weird connections that you're like, am I just reading into that? No, it's really happening. There's really a karmic energy. Something just took place, right? When any of us take a step onto the path of truth, we begin to shine our inner light a little brighter and a little brighter and a little brighter. And what happens is we draw the attention of entities that are attracted to that type of energy. So that's going to mean seekers. It's going to mean other guides. It's going to mean all kinds of people are going to be just like magnetically drawn into your life suddenly to, in accordance with your will and in accordance with your position in your life, push that along. When you enroll the universe in your growth, it's going to provide to you what you need in order for that growth to take place. And that includes the people that you have conspired to bring into your life. For some reason, I'm here for you. For some, Hales is here for you. You are here for Hales. And so our job is just to get out of our ways, forget about the why, and just take a look at what the message is. Our soul knows the why. And that's a different conversation you can have, right? But so, that said, I'm starting to lose it. I'm not very good to my body. I'm very bad to my body. I should be sleeping a lot more, and I just don't, because I don't know. Ever since I was a child, frankly, the most I sleep is maybe 6 hours, and that's rare. Today I slept 2, and then I slept another 2 several hours later. So and I'm about to do that again. I got stuff going on tomorrow, and I have to be up and things to do, and I'm fine. But I'm tired right now. But that said, we covered a couple of subjects here that were kind of interesting, and I think that hopefully not answered questions, but created questions, because that's the goal of what I'm trying to do here, is plant seeds. Yes, you're not kidding. And so I hope I was effective in doing that. There's a few things here as well that I wanted to kind of talk about that I didn't jump into with respect to color and sound, and more specifically how to use the correct order to understand this whole thing. So that said, I appreciate everybody that jumped in on the stream. And if you did listen, then I appreciate that. It makes a big difference. If I made an impact at all I ask is that you like the video and consider a comment. It's totally within your power to buy me a cup of coffee if you choose to do that. But all kidding aside, I really appreciate everybody that jumped on the stream, okay? And I am open as well to ideas. There's a lot of subjects that I can talk about with respect to tarot. It's almost 40 years. But I would rather talk about what people want to know. So if there's any particular subjects about the tarot, whether it's historical, the story of how it developed, if you have any specific questions related to the Golden Dawn or the Rosicrucian Society or Freemasonry and how they go about that, or if you have questions about any of the particular different systems like the alchemical system or the Marseille system or these other systems that are not related to the Golden Dawn, there's a lot of subjects, how to use them and read them. And so just, you can either shoot me a text or an email with any suggestions or anything that you would want to learn about, and we can go from there, okay? I was joking, but I appreciate that. Don't be silly. But that said, though, Again, thank you to everybody who joined the stream. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great night.